Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. GetDucks.com, your proven source for the very best waterfowl hunting adventures. Argentina, Mexico, 6 whole continents worth. For 2 decades, we've delivered real duck hunts for real duck hunters. And USHuntlist.com, because the next great hunt is closer than you think. Search our database of proven U.S. and Canadian outfits. Contact them directly with confidence. Trust is earned. By the numbers, 121 waterfowl subspecies bagged on 6 continents, 20 countries, 36 U.S. states, and growing. I spend upwards of 225 days per year chasing ducks, geese, and swans worldwide. And I don't choose shotguns for their brand name or the cool factor. Y'all know me way better than that. I've shot Benelli for over 2 decades. I continue shooting Benelli shotguns for their simplicity, utter reliability, and superior performance. Whether hunting near home or halfway across the world, that is the stuff that matters. Sit means sit and stay until it doesn't. No matter how well or how often trained, retrievers want those ducks as badly as we do, maybe even more. Chardog might be titled, but she's still just a dog. I'm over 50 years old and I still do dumb stuff, trust me. Retrievers are family. I wouldn't endanger my children near heavy traffic, and I'm not going to risk my dog jumping in front of blazing guns either. Gundog Outdoors' patented quick-release safety system is fully adjustable, tethers to any blind or stand, has titanium stakes for frozen ground, and a quick-release marine-grade shackle to quickly release Fido when the smoke clears. Visit gundogoutdoors.com. Connect with them on Instagram at Gundog Outdoors to see their growing line of Gundog safety and performance products. Enter hashtag GetDucks to receive 15% discount off of your first order. Boss Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shots come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever perform like good old-fashioned lead. Say goodbye to all that gimmicky, high recoil, compensation, science, hype, and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern, take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck Season Somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations. Welcome back to Duck Season Somewhere. I am in the Gallatin River Valley of Montana, not too far from Bozeman. Today's guest, Brady Davis, world-famous Brady Davis, and Matt McCormick. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Good.
We're great.
Good. Introduce y'all. I know who you are, but introduce yourselves to everybody else. Just take turns and who are you?
Go ahead, Matt. You can start.
Matt McCormick here in Bozeman, Montana. Photographer, work with Sika Gear, a handful of other companies. We're goose hunters, man, here in this valley, and we're excited to be here and happy that you're here with us.
Y'all are goose hunters. You were saying last night that given a choice, you'll never go after ducks.
Yeah, I would say that in general, if we have the choice, we're going to pick geese over ducks.
Pick geese.
Yep. And there's some instances where we can run traffic on ducks or geese and kind of pull them both in, but for the most part, we're targeting geese, man.
Does that go back to your origins of being born and raised in Wisconsin? Because that's kind of a goose country.
It's definitely goose country, but you run into a lot of duck hunters out there. They got a pretty good flyway through there, but for me, I think I just fell in love with goose calling, goose hunting, and it's just stuck with me ever since. It's just kind of been my one fast track. Mm-hmm. Haven't really turned back from that.
What about you, Bray?
So I moved to Bozeman 6 years ago now, but in 2004, my wife and I moved to northern Colorado, and I was managing a horse ranch there. And we had a couple 100 acres of corn and different crops under pivot. And when I was managing this ranch, I just was watching geese land in the fields. And I grew up a hunter, but I did not grow up a waterfowl hunter. Growing up, my dad would take us hunting, but it was like mule and horse pack trips in the backcountry for deer and elk and things like that. And then me and my buddies in high school got into the hound dog game, and I was into hunting mountain lions and bears and bobcats and coon hunting. And I mean, we did some jump shoots and stuff in high school. Everybody's got a farm pond, and we'd see ducks in there, and we'd go jump shoot them and shoot some ducks. But I did not grow up a waterfowler. And then when I moved to Colorado and watched all those geese fly into a field, man, I got the bug. I remember I ran down to Sportsman's Warehouse one day and bought a Jeff Foyle's Fallen Skies goose hunting video.
Yeah.
Came back, threw that sucker in the DVD and watched that for about an hour and a half and was just fired up and went straight back to Sportsman's Warehouse and bought some Bigfoot decoys, a dozen. And I also bought a zinc power clucker, a poly power clucker.
The poly
one.
wall.
Oh, yeah, $25 or something.
They were an awesome call, too, and they were small, so you could fit them in your hand real nice.
Yeah, clear. Was great. I actually still have it, but learned how to do just like the most basic cluck ever, and I took those decoys out a couple days later, and I laid underneath a bed sheet. It was snowing. Laid underneath a bed sheet in that field and started making some awful-sounding clucks, and some geese were flying, and sure enough, I had a group come and center up on me, and the limit was 3 at the time, and I remember clear as day I had wind at my back, and these geese just came straight in, and I sat up and went 1, 2, 3 and tripled. Wow. And I remember I was about 300 yards from the barn that my wife and I were living in. There was a big barn with like an apartment in it. And I grabbed those geese and went hauling butt back to the barn, just pumped out of my mind. She's like, well, it looks like you killed some geese. And it was right then and there for me that I knew that this was it.
You were hooked.
I mean, after that, I started kind of actively getting out of the hound dog game. Year and a half later, I had a Labrador and a bunch of decoys and was going at them hard. And so I love duck hunting as well, but the truth is I kind of cut my teeth in this world on Canada geese, and that's really what I want to hunt.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. Where did you learn to call? How did you learn to call? Did you just pick it up and start blowing it like an instrument and figure it out yourself?
Nope. So when I bought that call, there was a CD, that you could listen to. So I threw that sucker in the truck, and it was just talking, how to blow the call. And
was it Field or Freddie?
Honestly, I don't remember, man.
Yeah.
I don't even
remember. I can't
remember.
remember either if that was Field or Freddie doing those at that time. I want to say it was Field.
I don't even remember the names. I remember the very first nice goose call I ever bought after that was a zinc moneymaker. Mm-hmm. That was Field's call. He'd won a bunch with. Mm-hmm. Chartreuse.
Yep.
That sucker was beauty.
That was the only one they made it in.
I know, and I remember I bought that call, and this is at a time in life, my wife and I had no money. We were like newlyweds, babies, the whole shebang, and I'm running a horse ranch. And I don't remember what I paid for that call, but I want to say it was like $100.
It was probably $150.
Maybe, yeah.
You probably told her $100.
I probably told her it was even less than that, but yeah. I remember I went in there, and I remember buying it, and like I got at the call counter, which is back by the guns, and then you had to like walk up to the front.
Yeah.
And I remember carrying that thing and just like, man, like rent, moneymaker, rent, moneymaker. Bought it.
Yeah.
And I was pumped on that. That was the first, nice goose call I ever owned.
Yeah.
But after that, man, it was all goose hunting. In northern Colorado, if anybody, for anybody that's ever hunted there is a enormous amount of geese there. And doing the horse thing, I just knew a lot of people with horse properties, farmers, etc., and
the right people.
Was able to get into some spots and learn how to run traffic on Canada geese. It was awesome. So, yeah, I did not do a lot of duck hunting.
It's interesting you talk about the call wall. So when I was in my senior year of high school, I worked for Sportsman's Warehouse, and I was working behind the gun counter, and naturally the call wall was something that was a big attraction for everybody at that time. You'd have the calls in the case, and that was something everybody wanted to look, feel, and touch and blow, but they would always pull them off the wall. I remember when I first heard somebody blow on a goose call, like an actual short read at some level goose call, and it sounded like a bunch of geese. We were at a store set at Sportsman's Warehouse, and a guy by the name of Scott, something. I can't remember his last name for the life of me right now. He was blowing on a half-breed. And he was all the way across the store in this store set, and I remember hearing that, and I'm just like, how the hell does he make that thing sound like that many geese? And that was kind of when I just picked up and was like, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
I went up to him, asked him what he was blowing. He said, this is Tim Ground's half-breed, but you don't want to learn on this one. Go ahead, pick yourself one up off the wall. And I grabbed a Big River Flock Talk, and I grabbed the Sean Stahl's Honker Talk DVD. And those two things were like the gateway into where we are today. Mm-hmm. Without those two, I mean, who knows?
How long ago was that?
That was, for me, that was 2000. That would have been 2003. Yeah, 2003.
You come a long way since then listening to you in the blind this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had some good training. From there, once I figured out how to make that first noise, I was able to meet some of the right people. And, we had talked about this a little bit, but when I was first starting, it's interesting how when you get something in your mind and that's the path you want to go down, how you're able to find that path.
That's right.
and move your way through the crowd to figure out your destination. And I really wanted to learn how to goose hunt, but mostly I wanted to learn how to goose call, more so than goose hunt to begin with. And just by doing that, you start talking to people, you start meeting people, and I was able to get introduced from a friend of a guy that, knew a guy that was a good goose hunter and might be interested in helping me out. His name's Randy Southard. He was still to this day probably one of the best goose hunters that I've met, and I've met a lot of guys, and he was able to just kind of take a young buck under his wing and just kind of bear with me through the adolescent phase that I was going through.
Yeah.
Senior year of high school and into college. And
smelled bad for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I was always late. So
you don't say.
And so he was always very much, he didn't have anybody else that could hunt every day. He set up his life perfectly for goose hunting.
Yeah.
He was, full-time, lifetime military, got a job as a Outagamie County officer on patrol, second shift. He could scout, and he'll probably hate that I'm saying this. He could patrol every night and then hunt every morning.
Yeah.
Which was perfect. And so he could hunt every day, and I could too because I had nothing going on. So we just became pals, and he taught me how to call, and it was a really cool long-term progressive learning curve as I got through the notes and through the cadences and worked with him and Saunders together. And it was really quite like almost a serendipitous moment when it was like, all right, you're ready. Let's do a contest. I start blowing in some contests, had some success, won a couple. We get to the Wisconsin State Goose Calling Competition, and Randy and I decide we're going to blow in the contest together against each other as competitors, but we're a team. And he's, older than me at the time. I was, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. And he was 35, 36, 37, somewhere in there. Right in there. And we both made it to the third round. And wouldn't you know it, that bastard beat me in the third round and ended up winning the competition. And I got –
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never saw it coming. And he pulled out he says to me right before it, he's like, hey, I've been working on this goose routine. You want to hear it? I'm like, yep. And so I listened to it, and I'm like, you're going to do the old T-Rex. He's like, well, I just don't think they've heard that before. And I don't know if you know what the old T-Rex is,
Wow.
but it's a call that originally came out on one of the Bad Grammar DVDs. Trinan was talking about it, and it's kind of like a really long, drawn-out buzz with two quick spits at the end. And nobody does that note. And he was going to pull it out in the state competition. He's like, I got nothing to lose. I'm the underdog here, and he's a damn good caller. And sure as shit, he pulls that thing out, and he ends up winning the whole damn thing. And I couldn't have been more proud of him.
That's awesome.
Good.
It was just really cool.
How did y'all both end up here in Bozeman? And I'm gonna break and say, at some point in time in history, Bozeman was just a sleepy little cowboy town, and it's not anymore. And I was with a mutual friend of ours, Redbeard, this summer, going down one of the rivers in his boat. Y'all call him Tex, I call him Redbeard. Yarnell, we're talking about. And man, he described, you got this perfect this perfect combination of people in the Bozeman area. You got the old folks that were here, just country and rednecks, I'd call them. You know, it's what we call ourselves back home. And then you got just some other folks that come in that were looking for a little bit different ideal or something, and it just made the perfect, boom, they just blended together. It wasn't any conflict. It just took off. And, man, to me, Bozeman is such a cool area. If I had moved out here at some point in time when I was younger, I'd have never left.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful country. It's a great city. But what led y'all here? Because y'all, you know, most people here, I'm thinking, came from somewhere else, you know. And,
yeah.
But how did y'all end up here in Short?
It's funny you bring up that analogy. So there's a country music song by a singer named Cody Jinks.
Yeah.
Called Cowboys and Hippies. He talks about raising hell with the hippies and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I feel like Bozeman is.
Bozeman.
It is.
That's
it
a
is
good
a cowboy town,
yeah.
full of hippies and hunters and fly fishermen and skiers, and I mean it's got all types. So for me personally, you know, I grew up in a family. My dad hunted a little bit, like I said, but my dad's passion was really fly fishing. I grew up in Utah, and so we came up here sometimes on vacations, and we'd go fly fishing in the Madison River, Yellowstone River, whatever. And then as I got a little bit older, I was really involved in rodeo. And so I had come up here for a lot of rodeos and things and traveled around doing that. And, man, I just had it in my head, like, from my early teenage years that if things went well in life, you'd end up in Bozeman, Montana. And I remember as a kid all the time, I'd tell my dad or anybody, yeah, I'm going to live in Montana. And every single time I would say that, people would say, well, the only problem with Montana is you got to figure out how to make a living. There's not a lot up there. And I just kind of had it in my head that I was going to figure out how to get here. And so even when I got married, you know, my wife and I got married real young, and we lived in Colorado and South Carolina and then Utah again and now Montana. But when we were, I have a funny story for you. So when we were first newlyweds, we were in college, and I was probably 22, she was 20, and we went to school one day, both of us, we carpooled to college together, and it's kind of a long story, I won't get into it now, but I ended up dropping out of school that day. Mm-hmm. Like 10:30 in the morning, left a business law class, and literally went down to the admissions office and pulled out. And it was kind of a tricky deal for me because I was there on a full ride rodeo scholarship. But I dropped out, and I remember I called my wife on the cell phone, and I said, hey, what are you doing? She said, well, I'm in class. And I said, well, I just dropped out of school. And I said, you ought to do the same. And she said, okay. And sure shit, she drops out the same day. And we had this old, like, extended cab, old Dodge Cummins pickup with a flatbed on it. And she said, what do we do now? And I said, well, we got about $300. Let's go to Montana. And so we drove back to our house. Now it's like 11 noon. And we loaded up some bedrolls and a cooler. And we didn't have any money, so we were going to camp out and cruise around Montana. And I had these two Catahoula cow dogs. And we loaded them on the flatbed. That was back in the day when you could just put a dog on a flatbed and drive down the interstate. And we went to Montana, and, man, we stayed up here for like 8 or 9 days and just cruised around and camped. And we spent a lot of time in Dillon and around the Big Hole River, up in kind of like Wise River and Wisdom and that area. And I remember just telling her, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know when we're going to do this, but we are going to end up in Montana. And she was all in and super game. And 9 days into that trip, I looked at the bank account, and I think I had about $60 left, and I calculated the diesel fuel cost to get back to Utah, and we kind of had to cut that trip short at that point because I said, honey, we got to get home.
Yeah.
We're going to be broke when we get there, but we'll be there. And we came back, and ever since then, it's just kind of always been a thing for us. And so, 6 years ago when the opportunity came up, it was kind of a no-brainer to come here.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? How'd you end up out here from Wisconsin?
It was a long road to get here. First starting out Wisconsin, left there, moved to southern Idaho, kind of that south central Burley area. Ag country down there. I'd hunted down there a handful of times and really just fell in love with the hunting and had some friends down there, knew some people, was kind of ready to get out of the Wisconsin scene. And one day I just kind of, we quit quit the job. Within 5 days, I packed my truck with everything I had. Basically a Goose cart with 6 dozen Dave Smith Lessers, 1 X-Lander blind, a gun, 870, and whatever else I could fit, some clothes, and, put it in the back of the truck and headed west without even a plan, really. Nowhere to live, I knew some people, but just making calls on the way there, letting them know, hey, I'm on my way, and guess what? Oddly enough, goose season starts in about 2 weeks, so let's just go ahead and start scouting. I need a scouting route. And I, got out there, did that deal for about 4 years, working on and off and doing as much hunting as I could. Loved the hunting down there, completely different than what I had ever done. It's truly Western style goose hunting down there for sure. Lots of short fields, beets, potatoes, winter wheat cover crop. Like, that's it. All field edge hunting with big groups of geese, and they're a little bit smaller than the geese here. It's the same goose, but it felt like it was a little smaller goose. So I'm working through that deal, navigating that deal. Love taking photos at the time. Kind of piqued my interest and sold some photos on commission or on consignment over there at the local gift barn with this gal. She was slinging photos for me. She'd make a little cut. I'd take a photo of a bee on a flower or something, and she'd sell it to somebody. And I just really liked it. And it was something that I wanted to do more of. But I didn't really know how to navigate the industry. I didn't know how to navigate, how do I do this for a living? And I remember I picked up a new lens while I was there. I think it was like a 55 or 18 to 55, something like that. And I started taking some photos, and I jumped on the refuge farms. You remember the refuge farms?
Oh, yeah.
I was on there a ton.
Wow. What was your handle?
Matt BS.
Really?
Yep. And that's a great handle. Yeah. Yeah. So that's funny, huh?
That's great.
It was like a Bill Saunders
That's
thing.
going to be your new nickname.
Yeah.
Matt BS.
Matt BS.
Yeah. Some of y'all may remember me.
Tomorrow morning, 5:30, I'm going to be calling you that.
Yeah, I mean, the refuge forums was a thing. That was
the
thing.
Yeah.
A lot of drama on there.
Yeah, and I knew a lot of the guys that were causing it, and it was great.
Yeah.
I loved chirping people on there and just watching people get in arguments about all sorts of things, just like they do now on Instagram, Facebook, all that. But I didn't have Facebook back then. I did, but didn't use it. Instagram wasn't a thing. The only way you could keep in touch with people, the only way I knew to navigate the industry was go through the refuge forums.
That's right.
How do I do this? I remember jumping in there and putting some photos up, and they used to have a photography thread in there. And I remember jumping in there and posting some of my photos and being like, hey, guys, what do you think about this? This is really fun, and just getting my ass reamed by people. Just like, you don't know what you're doing. What you need to do is put down that camera and get a job. Like, basically what they're telling me. And I'm just a kid. Like, I had just gotten some fresh snowshoes.
Internet experts.
I'm out just walking around in the mountains, just like, check this out. And then I got guys ruthless.
Yeah.
Ruthless feedback, which was good for me at the time. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got something to learn. And so I just started digging and diving and trying to figure that out. And things weren't really working out in Idaho the way I wanted to. I did a job up in Billings working construction. We were working on the Pompeyes Pillar, which is, out kind of that Billings area. Did you ever go there?
No, I passed by it, yeah.
You should stop in there sometime. It's the last standing evidence of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Clark's name is in the sandstone right there, and it's all covered in glass and everything.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That he thought to sign his name.
Yep. And so we were there on site doing some work, and we were staying in Billings, and I got to meet some people from Montana. We were here for 2 months. And I got to meet some people in Montana. I'm like, this is a place that I could, like, these are way more my people than these people in southern Idaho. Nothing against the people in southern Idaho. They're just not like me.
Montana.
Yeah. And so I just kind of said to myself that I want to figure out a way to get to Montana. There's nothing holding me down here. Hunting's great. There's got to be hunting up there. Let me just see what I can find out. And I ended up watching a film called Searching for West, which is a sick kind of dramatized documentary around a guy by the name of Mark Seacat, who's from Bozeman, or like from Helena, but lives in Bozeman, talking about this struggle of going through becoming a new father, but also having all of these personal goals with elk hunting and all these things. And it's just like this constant battle, and it's this back and forth pull. And it was brought to you by Sitka Gear, which was super cool. I mean, it was the first of its kind in the hunting industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. And still to this day, I think, arguably, I would say still one of the best hunting films ever made, especially because of the time that it was made. So I watched that, and I showed it to a few of my friends in Idaho. I'm like, there's one specific moment in that film where Mark says in his voiceover, he says, "People are expecting me to be hunting, but I'm having all of these, torn, I'm being torn, family, personal, work, all this stuff. But what really stuck out to me is people are expecting me to be hunting." And I didn't know what that meant, but I really was interested. I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean like family is expecting you to be hunting? It didn't really seem that way. It seemed like professionally people are expecting me to be hunting. And I wanted to learn more. So I reached out to him on Facebook. I jumped on Facebook, reactivated my account, reset the password. I'm like, okay, I'm back online. Looked him up, sent him a Facebook message, and we swapped numbers, and we got on the phone and started talking, and one thing kind of led to another. And he was telling me about some internships that he was offering up for the summer. At the time, I was planning on doing something else photography-wise, kind of setting my own thing up down there in Idaho. And he's like, if you want to learn how to do this, you show up, you come up here, you show up, there will be a desk for you. And you can come up here and learn, see what we do, come, hang out, have fun, figure this out, and work for me. Mm-hmm. For no money, of course, but it was a great opportunity. Fairly low risk for him, but he offered the opportunity up of like, if you get here, you can test your luck. Like, let's see what you got. And within a week, I, again, packed my truck, everything I had, moved to Bozeman, called one of the guys that I knew worked for him, and told him that I was coming. And so I ended up staying in the basement of a house with 4 or 5 guys and lived on a couch for 4 months with a stack of clothes and a bag of decoys, and just kind of went to work, man. Just learned how to do it and started just figuring out the area.
But that's a great thing about being young. What do you have to lose?
I had nothing to lose.
We were talking on the drive back from your house, that quote from Henry David Thoreau, most people live lives of quiet desperation because they're scared to just take a chance and go sleep on a couch and learn something. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Yeah. I would think so. See the world bigger than their backyard.
Yeah. And I feel like there's people that are becoming more accustomed to that type of change. Right now, I'm feeling that. I can see it. I mean, Bozeman's a prime example with the massive growth. All these people coming from the outside coming in, they're all coming on a whim. None of them are coming for jobs. A lot of them are coming for lifestyle and going to figure it out from there. And, that's what got me here, man. I said I wanted to find a way to get here. Mark offered me the opportunity. I jumped on it and worked hard and ended up figuring out a way to make it happen, man.
What happened after that? I mean, where did you go from there? You took the internship, and then it evolved into a job at Sitka? Or?
Yeah, so basically what happened was there was 6 interns that came in. I was one of them. There was one job available. So he was looking to hire somebody. Full-time social media management, photo taking, the whole 9 yards. Everything CCAT Creative was doing in those days, which was leading the charge on creative, authentic, commercial photography. Like
so
I would argue that
was almost kind of like a live interview. I mean,
yep,
kind of, yeah,
yep,
yeah.
And it was, I'll say this to anybody. That team, me included, we were a part of the front end of this whole thing that we're experiencing right now.
Right.
And it was just a rad group of guys, man. Like, it was like a frat house in there. And because I moved from Wisconsin to Idaho, I had been adulting for like 4 years, trying to figure it out, work, play, hunting, and everything else, like trying to figure it out. And getting back up here, it was just like, man, I missed out on some life. Let's just go ahead and do this party thing again. And it was just so damn fun, man. We just had a great time, and I got along with everybody. Kind of found my niche in waterfowl, and Sick had just launched their waterfowl pattern, and they didn't have anybody taking photos. And so it just kind of seamlessly worked for me to be able to get in there and kind of show what I had, because they didn't have anybody else doing it. And just started taking photos, man, just right here in Bozeman with the pals, scouting hard, finding birds, getting permission and doing the deal, taking photos the whole way. And just through that started meeting people and started doing a little bit of traveling. Sika was paying for it. CCAT was paying for it. Like, we were all working together. We were all doing cool shit all the time and all working together to get better. Like, the whole goal was like, we are going to continue to lead this charge, and we're going to be the best there is, and we need to work as a team to do it. And that led into a job. When I finally ran out of money, I just told Mark I got to move back to Idaho because I need to find a job, and he offered one up to me, and I stayed. Lived on that couch for another 3 months or so. During that time, met who is wife now, and Camille, and her and I have been together ever since. And yeah, so if you fast forward from there, I split from CCAT in 2015. Just different focuses. I wanted to go hard, and so I quit there and just started kind of knocking down the doors that I could, building that network throughout the last few years, and just started making those phone calls, and slowly led to where we're at today. What seemed like very slowly. A lot of hard work, just over and over and over, and just stay in the field and keep photographing and keep calling and keep doing the work and keep trusting yourself and working hard. And and now we're here.
One of the most fun seasons ever, by the way, as a side note, was when Matt quit working for CCAT and was kind of going out on his own, doing his own thing. And I was here, and he basically quit his job, and so he had nothing going on. And it was phenomenal because my job in the winter, I'm wide open. And gosh damn, we hunted a lot that season. Like every day there was never a day that you call, you want to hunt. No, I got to work.
Yep.
How did y'all meet? Scouting geese or what?
That's a funny story too.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. So what happened? Me. Yeah, it still is kind of a burr under my saddle actually on how we met. So back then, that would have been 2015, huh? 14, 15?
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. It must have been summer of 15.
Jim Sobier from Sika Gear, who's the guy that develops all the gear, he was having like this, basically like a little waterfowl summit type get-together, and he had a handful of hunters, brought in some guys from around the country. I was here. Ted Wells, McCormick was here. And it was just kind of a couple days to get together and run through gear and basically give Jim feedback on Sika gear.
Yeah. And just hang out.
And just hang out and get to know each other. And so it was a lot of fun. We actually would come and hang out. We'd party at night, and we'd go in the office and just go through all the gear and tear it up. Well, Jim's a big sporting clays guy, skeet, trap, sporting clays. And he had set up this sporting clay shoot just out west of here, and so we were in the office. Then we were going to go out that afternoon. All of us were going to go shoot sporting clays. Well, keep in mind, you're in a room with like 5, 6, 7 of us, and everybody's bowed up at this point, right? You're going to go shoot sporting clays. Nobody's saying it verbally, but the truth is we're all kind of sizing each other up and trying to see like, man, I hope this goes well. I don't want to look like an idiot, etc. And so we get there, and I remember as soon as we started shooting, there's a guy named Cody Tangsrud who's a really, really good shooter, probably one of the best shots I've ever seen.
Yeah, national champion.
And Ted Wells, and those two quickly pulled ahead. Like they were the two that were not ever missing. And then there was me and Matt behind them, kind of running neck and neck. And again, I didn't really know Matt, but we're kind of running neck and neck.
Jim behind them, kind of in all on his own.
Yeah, Jim was doing his own thing, and then dead last was Ricky Hart from Lucky Duck. He's going to love that I bring that up, by the way.
Oh, we're just telling the truth around here.
Yeah, he's going to say, well, it wasn't my shotgun, and yada, yada.
Oh,
but anyway, so, you get in that situation, and I'm hyper-competitive, and so is Matt. And so we're kind of shooting neck and neck through this whole thing, and I'm thinking, only thing I got to do today is just beat Matt McCormick. And so we're shooting and we're going through the rounds, and again, it's neck and neck. I'd be up a couple, he'd be up a couple, and we get down to the very end, and it's like a dead nuts tie. And in the end, Matt beat me by one clay.
One clay.
And to this day, it chaps my ass. I mean, every time it comes up, I still hate it a little bit. But that's how we first met, and then as we were talking and getting in.
And Ted ended up winning.
Yeah. He beat Cody,
yeah.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
Ted's a really, really, really good shot. But then as Matt and I got to talking, and, we were there for the waterfowl thing, he was talking about goose hunting, and that was really honestly the only thing I cared to talk about either. And so that's kind of how Matt and I met is I figured he wanted to just hunt geese. He just kept talking about wanting to hunt geese, and that's really all I was here to do was hunt geese. And so we started hunting together and been hunting together ever since.
Yep.
Talk about goose hunting here in the Gallatin River Valley, because we talked about it in depth. We did some today. How is it different, for example, than hunting in Wisconsin or Colorado?
Yeah, I would say that it is very different than hunting in Wisconsin. I would say that it is marginally different than hunting in Colorado.
I would agree.
In Wisconsin, you have these shortgrass prairie geese that are very aggressive. They move through the flyway very quickly. I'll go out and say that the peak of their season is in October. It's one of the only ones that October is game on in Wisconsin, especially in like that. Anywhere from Green Bay, I would say anywhere from the fields of Green Bay all the way down to the Horkin Marsh. It's just late October into November is game on. And those geese are just moving fast. They're moving fast. They're getting a lot of cold that's pushing them. They're getting a lot of strong north winds. They're feeding really aggressively. They got to go a long ways. So you have really aggressive geese. They're really loud. And they're small. Or smaller. In Colorado, you get a lot of the same geese that we get, but they also get spillover from South Dakota, so you get a lot of small geese too. I'm sure you've hunted there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's two things about Colorado. One thing, there's a ton of geese, right? There is so many geese on the Front Range. That also brings a lot of hunters and a lot of pressure, a lot of outfits. It's been commercialized for a really long time. As long as I can remember, at least. And
it was before I even started in 2004.
Yeah, and so that type of hunting, it's because of the leasing and because of the amount of people and because of the clientele and the club members and all of that stuff, they hunt a lot of pits. And those pits are, although in the similar crops that we're hunting up here, they're set up perfectly. And it's just almost all pit hunting. Every hunting that I've ever done has been out of pits up there. I know there's probably some other stuff in there, but
yeah, definitely when you're hunting with an outfitter, I would say there's a lot of pits. All the good feeds in Colorado are leased fields, and so hobby hunters and weekend guys that are hunting are almost exclusively running traffic.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, we'd be in layout blinds or, rough hunting or whatever you were doing. But really when I was hunting there, it was running traffic. Because everything else was leased. All the good stuff was leased up.
Were you hunting on the field edge?
I was hunting on the field edge most of the time, yeah. I tried everything. Again, I didn't really go into it with a mentor to walk me through it. So there was a ton of trial and error.
Yep.
I remember I had no idea about big geese and little geese, and I remember at first thinking, gosh, there's just geese everywhere, and I can kill these big buggers, but these little geese are just wearing me out. Mm-hmm. Could not figure out how to kill those little geese, and finally, after hunting with some other guys and starting to figure it out, started increasing the decoy spread and learning how to run traffic on lessers. And, that changed a lot. But it's still very different than hunting here.
Yeah, and same goes for Wisconsin. Going back to that real fast, a lot of that stuff is small fields, fairly small, what I would consider as small, under 300 acres, and a lot of corn. Mm-hmm. And so you have infield hides a lot of the time. There's so much corn, and there's a lot of combine corn, and they go to a lot of no-till because of the shale and all that stuff. And so you just have some really good hides, and you always have wind. And it's almost always out of the northwest. It's great.
Were you in layout blinds?
Fantastic. Out of layout blinds exclusively.
Okay.
Yep. And you'd hunt some chisel plowed stuff, and that stuff was always challenging for everybody. We'd be out there with a gallon jug of water and a bucket and a broom, and you're just mixing mud and trying to mud up your blind to match that dirt from the field that morning. And you're out there way too early, and then you get there, and if the sun shines, you're kind of screwed. And if the clouds were there, you could set off the decoys, and you could probably do it as long as you didn't have a shadow. And that was just really different than hunting in Idaho, which like I mentioned is what I would consider as like true Western style Canada goose hunting, right. which is short fields, again, main crops, beets, potatoes, cover crop of some sort of winter wheat, and now here we're hunting barley. Other than that, that's our four crops.
Yeah,
we get some.
Sure.
Well, every once in a while we get some peas, and sometimes they're in the alfalfa or pasture in the winter when it gets real cold for loafing. But for the most part, those are the four crops we're hunting, and because of that, those are all really short fields. I mean, a potato field when it's harvested looks like dirt. Mm-hmm. A beet field when it's harvested looks like dirt. When they overdo a cover crop on it with any sort of winter wheat, it looks like dirt with perfectly drilled rows of green, which you cannot replicate.
No.
And then barley that's cut like today, 2 inches tall and laid over.
Mm-hmm.
So you just cannot hide in the field. So the style of hunting changes really drastically from small fields where you can hide pretty much anywhere on any wind. See, my story's putting Ramsey to sleep.
No.
I think those moose burgers are putting Ramsey to sleep.
Yeah, those Bam Bam moose burgers.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Small fields where you can hide on any wind because you can hunt in the middle of a layout blind, to big fields, 320 acres or bigger for everything for the most part, and you can't hide in the middle, so you have to hide on the edge. And so what that does to the style of hunting is it forces you to rely on very strategic decoy placement and calling. They have to come to the call. You have to hunt them with the call, but they need to see your decoys.
More aggressively or less aggressively than Wisconsin?
Far less.
Yeah.
Yep. Far less aggressive, and it's funny when I go back to hunt with my mentor Randy, who I mentioned earlier. I'll go back there, and he's a traffic hunter. He traffic hunts those birds coming out of town. He gets under them. He hunts them in a pea field or a cornfield, just gets under the line and works his ass off. And I go back there and I call. He's like, "You've lost it, man. Those western geese have made you soft." I'm like, "I'm doing the best I can, man." He's like, "You've lost it. It's all right.
My ears are popping here."
He's like, It's all right. You don't have to do it. You're hunting those big geese, but it is far less aggressive of a goose. Sometimes you got to get hot and heavy with them just to get them to turn or on the edge, or sometimes they get out and you need them to swing, or whatever the case may be. You need to pull them up the field. Just like anything, you increase that momentum as you need them to do what you need them to do. But it is more of a finesse style of calling, especially when they're working. And we deal with a lot of no wind, so that just adds a whole new aspect to an already really challenging hunt where the goose wants to be in the middle of the field because he has a ton of predators here, and so you're trying to pull him to the edge with your decoys and your calling, and which is hard enough, and then he has no wind to center up, so he just skirts your edges.
That's what surprised me. When I think of being out west, I think of gale force winds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's because we're here in this valley. Mm-hmm. This morning we had a 2 to 4 mile an hour wind, and you're like, "Oh, this is normal."
Yeah, and that was
we're lucky to have it.
Yeah, except for it was in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to predict the wind around here. every little bit counts. A little bit of southwest all of a sudden changes everything on the edge. When you're on the edge, you can't move. You can't turn the blind. You can't do anything. You are stuck.
Especially when you're hunting a field where you have permission and, you can't necessarily turn around or put decoys on the other side. The wind changes, you're stuck to that field.
Or it's plowed to heck like today's was. We couldn't put decoys on that other side. They'd never seen them.
Yeah. No, they'd never seen them.
And there was no edge, really. I mean, you have to figure out your edge, figure out the wind, which, again, we rarely have any. We also basically, I would say, the most time hunt sun and no wind. So you have bright sun and frost.
Or snow.
And so all those things combined definitely increase the trickiness of it. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's a constant game of chess, I feel like, here. I feel like the big geese are a little bit easier to hunt than the lessers in general. But with the conditions that we have here in this valley particularly, it's just constantly changing and constantly trying to figure it out. And what's interesting here is sometimes, at least for me, like the tiniest little minute changes change the game.
Yep.
You'll be set up, we'll have decoys out, everything's right, and it's not working. And we'll get up and make the tiniest little decoy adjustment. Sometimes only moving 2 or 3 decoys or pushing something out a little bit or whatever. And gosh dang it, I mean, it like the light switch turns on. But because we have no wind and sun a lot, the hide, going back to the edge thing, the hide is like hands down the most critical thing that we do here.
100%.
You have to be like 100% dead hidden, because if they have no wind, they're just going to fly over and they can look and look and look, and they can decide and swing again and look and look and look and decide and swing again. And so on the rare occasions when we get wind here, it's a treat. The week before you were here, or the week before we met in North Dakota last week, I guess, we had a hunt, 15-mile-an-hour north wind, light snow, geese just bombing in, and it was like, this is awesome. You forget how great it is when you have a 10, 15-mile-an-hour wind and some snow coming down, and every goose that came into that field just centered up and did it just greasy, dirty right. But what you experienced with us today, that's how we hunt geese here.
That's very normal.
You got like the quintessential Bozeman, Montana goose hunting experience this morning.
It was a good hunt.
And you'll likely get it again tomorrow when we go.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Don't know till you go.
That's exactly it. And this morning, we're having unseasonably warm weather until, tomorrow night. It's going to change. This morning was 42 degrees first thing in the morning, light to no wind, partly cloudy. And those geese came out early. And they all came at once for the most part. We probably had, 350 to 450 geese in the area. And they just don't have to be there. Like, they don't have to feed. They don't have to do anything.
No.
Anything really. They're just kind of chilling, hanging out. They got to fly, but they all flew together.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen when it gets super cold, but in this scenario, like it was today, they all came out at once. I kept telling you, if you remember, we need to get this line of decoys moved 7 to 10 yards off, like from where it is. We need them 7 to 10 yards further. And we can move this line of 24 decoys out. If we can do that, it will pull them over the top of them, and they'll ride the line better. But we just didn't have time because it was just like wave, done.
Right, done.
And then the farmer came in the field, and he had to get it plowed before that cold comes. And we definitely could have worked a few more geese and gotten a one more group in there.
The ducks had just started coming out to play.
Yep.
Right about that time. The duck hunt was fixing to get good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was going to get dirty.
That was a first for me today, sitting in the field set up, and here comes a farmer with a plow and a tractor and just like straight goes to work and makes a pass or two on the far end of the field, and we're kind of watching.
We were all wondering this morning why that one pass was right there on our side of the field.
Yep.
I wonder why he did just this week. And he came back to get started, saw us, and turned back with us. I figured he was going back to barn. Hell no, he dropped a disc, started going and coming to us. And I couldn't believe how fast he was coming.
That's what I kept saying.
Man, we were running, picking those decoys up, and this guy was gaining on us.
He had that John Deere on tracks, and I mean, I've never seen one go that fast. I mean, that joker was turning dirt and burning diesel fuel.
Yeah, and I think
as
he was
fast as that could go.
14 inches he was digging because of the trying to get that frost line deep for the potatoes.
Yep.
14 inches he was deep, and he was going that fast.
He was going that fast. It said a lot to me about him and about maybe the people around here that he got off track and come up and apologized and said, I'm terribly sorry. I got to get this in before this weather hits.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he was apologetic.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Great guy.
You know.
Yeah, he's a good guy. That family's great, and they're just they're trying to make an honest living, and they want us out there. They want us doing it, and they love it that we are. But yeah, he's got work to do too, and we're out there playing.
What do y'all think is the number one hurdle or difficulty or the real tough spot about hunting in this part of the world? About that goose hunting? Is it the wind? Is it the cover? Is it the...
I think in this valley, if you're talking about the technicalities of the goose hunting, I would say it's a lack of wind and sun.
It's hard to steer them.
Yeah. Frost.
We just get really cold, stale weather. And so we'll get those high-pressure systems move in, and they'll just sit on top of us. Our low-pressure systems that bring snow, they come in and they dump snow, and they get out. Mm-hmm. I mean, a day and a half, 2 days, dump a bunch of snow. We'll have 2 feet on the ground, then it's gone, and it's just high pressure, cold, no wind. Mm-hmm. And that just creates really unique challenges. It makes it hard to hide. It puts those geese way up off the roost, so you got to break them down, and it's just it can be really, really tough. That's where the finesse game really comes in.
The other thing I will say real quick is that when you look at our weather and you're looking at the metrics of the weather in the winter, we get fairly humid. And I know there's a lot of parts in the country that get way more humid than we do, but we do get fairly humid for the west. Mm-hmm. And so the frost can be next level. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the right conditions, the frost can be incredibly next level to the point where, you put out decoys and leave, single slot bags over the decoys until it's time to go.
Until the first flock.
Until the first flock. You literally burn a flock with a whole decoy spread set out with single slot bags draped over the decoys. And as soon as those first geese come and you burn them and they flare out, then you're out there pulling bags as quick as you can. And at that point, you're hoping they just keep coming because you don't have frost for a bit.
Well, I noticed this morning when you laid the spread out, you were laying them in the bag. You were just laying the bag decoys out.
Yep.
And I was going behind you and staking, and that's why.
Yeah, that's first of all, that's the most efficient way to set out the single slot bags. But that is another reason. Yeah, just having them out. And what we'll do in the situation that we're talking about with the frost is we'll actually put them on the stake or stand. Usually in that scenario, we'll put them on the stand and then we'll take that bag and we'll drape it right over the top so that it gets on the bag, not the decoy. Then we'll pull the bags off when the geese start flying.
And because we have no wind, the bags don't blow away.
Yeah. Makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I did a Instagram post the other day about blowing snow off the decoys. We use a snow blower or a leaf blower, and that helps blow the snow off the decoys when you're getting just heavy downpour snow. And there was some guys that were really chiming in on different solutions that they had to that problem, including frost. And we haven't tried it yet, but the one that I'm really most interested in is Rooster was talking about doing. I think it was antifreeze. And I don't know what that'll do to one of the decoys, and we just need to try it. But he was talking about spraying them down with a spray
I've heard of that.
With antifreeze, and that'll help hold for an hour or two, and it'll keep that frost off, which could be a really handy.
I bet you
trick.
could use like that windshield wiper fluid that's got a little of that stuff in it. It'd be a little more dilute, but I bet it'd work.
Yeah, just anything, because those are the challenges from a technical aspect we run into here.
Yeah.
The stuff that we're talking about. What I will say is that, in the 6 years I've been here, I've seen this valley. When I first moved here and was first hunting with Matt, we were in a position where literally if we found a feed of geese, I'd say we were batting 90% to get permission and be able to hunt it. And there was really only one or two other kind of crews running around hunting geese in this valley. And so it was kind of I feel like I moved here at the tail end of the heyday, right? Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today, 6 years later, it's an entirely different game. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is. There are a bunch of people hunting, which is great, right? And I don't think it's a bad thing. There's a bunch of college kids that come here for school. and they moved to Bozeman to come to MSU because it's Bozeman, and they moved here for the same reasons we did.
And there's a bunch of guys like us
and
that were out of college that are just ready to live in Bozeman.
Yeah. And so I don't begrudge them for it. I think it's great that guys are out hunting, but it has become exponentially harder over the 6 years that I've been here to find geese, get permission,
and kill them.
They're way more pressure. The birds are getting beat up. We don't have that many big roosts in this valley either. The other thing is I think sometimes because of the photography, guys like Matt and these other photographers that are taking photos, especially for Sitka gear, they know Sitka gear is based in Bozeman, and these guys get all these kick-ass like goose hunting images that look sexy with mountains and lots of geese, and I think people think Bozeman's a great spot to hunt geese. The truth is that our valley at its peak does not hold that many birds. It's a fairly big valley, and I'd be blown away if we ever filled up and had 7,000 birds.
Wow.
I think we're probably closer to 4 or 5.
I think so too.
And so it's just, I think from an outsider looking in, when people look at all this beautiful imagery, and Bozeman breeds that, right? I mean, this is the hotbed for photographers and guys that are, wanting to do what Matt does. And so they see that and they think, oh, Montana, and it just kind of naturally transitions their mind to Bozeman because they know we all live here and we're hunting here and they think it's great. But the truth is, and I don't say this to deter anybody, if anybody wants to come hunt here, they should absolutely do it. But in the 6 years I've been here, it has become way, way harder.
Mm-hmm.
And just the urbanization of Bozeman. I mean, it's growing. I mean, we've lost 3 farms just in the last few years.
City limits.
The city limits are growing. Somebody will call me out on this number, but I'm gonna say it's growing at least a half mile a year, if not a mile a year, and that just changes things, man. It changes it.
Urban sprawl.
Yep, and it pushes you out, and the further out it gets, not only is your line that you can't hunt further out, but it's also people coming in and buying more stuff closer to town. Commercializing, the outskirts and putting new subdivisions in that are outside of town, or people that are just kind of moving here and they want to buy a little ranch, and there's 20 acres here, there's a 160 acre field over here that's for sale. They buy it, they put a house on it, it's no longer huntable, but the guy still farms it. They're just not into hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a really big challenge for us.
The other thing is, if you look at this valley, and it's basically like a big rectangle on a map, 2 sides of it, I mean, Bozeman proper butts up to the mountains. So there's really not a lot of urban sprawl going that direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's all going west of Bozeman and a little bit north of Bozeman into the ag area.
Right.
Because that's where there's land, right? That's where there's flat, good ground for development and subdivisions. And so as that moves west and north of Bozeman, that is where the geese are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just pushes that. And again, circling back, like I said, at our peak here, you can take a 50-mile linear measurement in this valley. We don't have but a few good goose roosts.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and half of them freeze.
And then when it gets dirty cold, they go to the river. There's just not that many roosts. And so when there's a lot of guys out hunting, I don't care if we're on different fields, we're beating up the same geese.
Right.
And those geese figure out the game. And so it's just becoming harder and harder to kill them here. I think it's a great spot to come, and for everybody that has romantic notions of hunting in Bozeman, come on.
But it's not just goose hunting. I mean, there's elk hunting, deer hunting, turkey hunting,
absolutely,
fly fishing, mountain biking, snow skiing. My gosh, it's a paradise.
It really is
of outdoor activity.
It'd be a terrible spot to live if you didn't like the outdoors.
Right.
Yeah, especially with the cold, and we get dirty cold. And part of the reason why we don't have a lot of birds is our physical geographic location within the flyways. We have a really big main vein of geese that comes down from Alberta and goes straight to Salt Lake. And there is a very clear path. Jump on a map if you want to find it. It is a very clear path, and they stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So we get spillover from that. Really what we get more of is the ones that are further outside of that trying to get to it. And so we are a stopping point for them. So they're actually moving.
Birds coming from the east.
Coming from the east, going to the west to get to that vein and get back on track. And so we're just a nice stopping point for them because guess what? We do have food and we do have open water, and that's all they need. So they can come here and they can hang out. But the more they get beat up, the faster they're going to leave. And that's the reason why we don't have a ton. You know, the Intermountain Canada goose population already isn't giant compared to, you know, further west and further east. You know, you get into the Central Flyway over there in Dakotas. I mean, it's crazy with geese. You get all the way over there to the Pacific Flyway, like up against the coastal stuff. I mean, it is nutty with geese.
Yeah.
We're just stuck and even like Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon, stuff like that, Idaho, Boise, all that stuff gets a lot of birds. Those are not the same birds that we're hunting.
Mm-mm.
We are hunting different geese, and our population just isn't that strong already.
We don't have a resident population.
Very, very small resident
I mean, there's
population.
a couple, but I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, it's non-existent.
Less than 1,000 geese within a 60-mile radius.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, like Brady said, if people want to come out and hunt here, it is a phenomenal, beautiful place, good food, great people. You're going to find like-minded people. There's going to be other hunters. You're going to find people you like, and there's a lot of us, and we're very welcoming. Like tomorrow, we're gonna spend a little time with some guys that also got permission on the same field that we're going to be hunting, and we'd never hunted with these guys before.
Some of them we've never even met.
Yeah, and that's just part of it. You know, you kind of just got to adapt and overcome and work together, and it's just all part of this deal. So yeah, I think
that is pretty cool. Rather than fighting and carrying on and getting hurt feelings, just work it out and hunt together.
Oh, there ain't no reason to get in an argument. Yeah. You know, like I was telling you
said
earlier.
Something the other day. It's funny. You know, it's funny because we all kind of sort of knew each other, but then we met just random over there in North Dakota. But you said something the other day about Bozeman and about the people here, how there's so much similarity. You know, like you get into any other community, my home community, you got these cliques. But over here, it's so much commonality. You don't know everybody, don't run around everybody. Cause, you know, say you don't gravitate towards any one clique because it's all kind of one clique.
Yeah, everybody's kind of the same, so you kind of just pick your people and run.
What else? Well, the other thing that I think is really cool about here is, like, you know, with our hunting groups and fishing and everything, and even in my business, you know, I have a business here in Bozeman, and I rarely run into people who are from Bozeman.
Yeah.
And everybody moved here for more or less the same reason, whether they're into goose hunting or not. It's just the outdoors. They moved here to fly fish. They moved here to mountain bike, to hike, to do this. They darn sure didn't move here for a phenomenal job 99% of the time, right? We have a small economy. You know, Montana's a giant state with barely 1 million people in it.
Right.
And so, you know, there's not a giant economy here. And so everybody moved here. The way I always describe it to people when I'm telling them is that people moved to Bozeman on purpose. Bozeman is not a spot where you get stuck. Mm-hmm. For one, it's too expensive to get stuck here. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly high cost of living in this valley. And so people move here on purpose, and they're usually gritty, outgoing, ambitious people who figure out a way to make it work to stay. And for me personally, those are the people that I'm interested in hanging out with.
Right.
I like people that are doers and movers and shakers and people that are passionate about things in life other than just work and coming home and sitting on the couch and drinking beer. You know, everybody that we know here, you know, in our friend group, the group of people Matt and I hang out with, there's a bunch of couples. I mean, everybody moved here from all over the country, from Mississippi, from Colorado, from Alaska and Idaho, all over, right? But we all came here for the same reason. Mm-hmm. And we get here and then we find these commonalities in and amongst ourselves. And it's really, really cool because you're hanging out with people that came here. You know, I feel like moving here and making a life here is kind of doing it the hard way. Again, it's expensive. There's not a lot of work. And so those are interesting people. Mm-hmm. They're people that are willing to make sacrifices in their lives in order to keep doing what they're passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I think those are people that fascinate me in the waterfowl world. Obviously, the guys that hunt hard are guys that make sacrifices in their life to do that. But heck, I can sit at a restaurant or a bar with a ski bum or somebody that's here to fly fish. And truth is, if they lived somewhere else and did it a different way, they could have a much easier and better life financially.
That's a good ending point because, it's a the point I'm trying to make is more to life than making a living. You also got to make a life.
100%.
That's something I know we all got in common, and I guess a lot of y'all's friends up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes. When I was living in South Carolina, I was working in a job, and I was working 7 days a week, and on paper it looked great, but I was miserable. I wasn't hunting, and I was just constantly dreaming about getting back out to the West. And one of my favorite quotes, and I have it written down on my phone, but it says, "And then there is the most dangerous risk of all, the risk of spending your life not doing what you want on the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later."
Boy,
and
you can take that to the bank.
And for me, I was in a position where I wasn't hunting. I could have made a lot of money staying and doing what I was doing, but I wasn't happy. And, man, listen, tomorrow's not guaranteed. We had this conversation yesterday. We don't know. God forbid something happens to the three of us tomorrow. I don't want to grow old and, spend my life working my butt off just on the off chance that when I'm old I get to go on some duck hunts and have some fun. People here are making a life, like you said, Ramsey, and I think that's really cool.
I think in this day and age, take this morning, I thought it was an excellent game, scouting program, everything to a T. I mean, boy, there were a lot of detail went into this morning's spread. And I thought we had a great shoot. An average shoot, by y'all's words, not mine, but a great shoot. It was a good shoot, and if you can't accept that, then what's the point? Go do something you want. But we talked about this last night, and I'm like, I'm going.
Yeah.
Because it's every hunt I don't go on is one less hunt I get to do, and that's what I want to do. I want to go duck and goose hunt.
100%. And it's just fun hanging out, right? I mean, last week Matt and I were in North Dakota snow goose hunting, and by all metrics, we got our asses handed to us.
Oh, yeah.
We saw
right on the heels of that major cold front.
We saw hundreds of thousands of snow geese, and in 3 days we killed 2 snow geese.
Yeah.
And driving back from that, I got to tell you, man, I had the time of my life.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with my pals. We're driving around. We're scouting. We're telling jokes. We're laughing. We're eating gas station food and dirty bar food in the middle of BFE, North Dakota. That's phenomenal, man. Mm-hmm. I could die tomorrow, and if I had to look back on last week, I would say it was a smashing success.
That's it.
I had the time of my life. And so I like hanging out with people that want to go do those types of things. And that's one thing I've obviously is being friends with Matt, I've appreciated is that, it's great having buddies that are on the same page, that are willing to do things that, we don't always kill geese, man. There's plenty of hunts we go on where we get just roasted. Mm-hmm.
But you learn from it.
You learn from it, and it makes you better. And then you do have those good ones, man.
That's
and
right.
It's a barn burner, and it's fun.
That's right.
You said it best today, Ramsey, when we were talking. I think we'd killed 10 whatever birds we killed today. The truth is, killing another 10 today would not have increased it wouldn't have increased my experience.
No.
It was the first time I ever got to hunt with you.
No.
We laughed, we hung out, we had a good time. You got to run your dog, who's a cool little dog, by the way. Mm-hmm. And
Ted told some good jokes.
Yeah, that's what it's about, right?
No, I thought it's like the farmer came up. We're out there having fun. He's trying to make a living, and one more bird, 10 more birds, 50 more birds, it wouldn't have made a damn bit of difference.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have changed the way I feel about myself, about my friends, about the hunt. I just had a great time.
Yeah.
And we'll get them tomorrow or the next day.
I think people get just so hung up on you just got to kill them, you got to kill them, you got to kill them. And listen, we all love that as much as anybody, but god dang, I can have just as much fun. I mean, we did it in North Dakota.
Yeah.
Put out a giant spread of decoys and get your ass handed to you. And we laughed the whole time, and I was in a great mood picking up decoys, and it was hilarious.
Get back in the trout, start scouting.
We went scouting again, and heck, I love driving around scouting, especially when you got a pal in the truck with you and you're not alone. I mean, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. How can people get in touch with y'all in social media if they wanted to? I'm sure they would. How do they connect with y'all on Instagram or wherever?
Yeah, reach out to our handles. They're really easy to remember. Matt McCormick 05 and Brady Davis 406. if you find one of us, you'll find us both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Most of the photos that I post, Matt probably took,
Mm-hmm.
or we're tagged in each other's ones, and
Yep.
we're hunting and fishing together.
Yeah, reach out anytime.
Hit us up.
We encourage people to reach out if they got questions about photography, questions about decoys, questions about strategy. I mean, we're thinking about all of this stuff every day, and I know everybody else is too. And if anybody's got questions, they can always reach out. We're really easy to get a hold of. Sometimes it may take a little bit, but we'll get back to you. That's one thing for sure. We will absolutely be honest about what's going on and what our thoughts are, and reach out anytime.
Or if you see something we're doing that you think you got a better idea, also reach out, because I want to learn.
Absolutely.
Guys around the country know more, and it's cool. That's one thing I love about the waterfowl community is it's a pretty tight-knit group, and people share information, and it's fun, man.
Yeah,
it's
and
cool.
the other thing that I'd say is when people are coming to Bozeman, we do get this a fair amount, but when people are coming to Bozeman or coming to Montana, feel free to reach out if they want to come and get together for a hunt. You know, you and your buddy are taking a road trip and you're going to go try it out, and you're going to go do the Canyon Ferry deal, or you're going to get on the mow and try something. Let's go ahead and, you know, we can at least point you in the right direction if we can't join you too, and we usually have some spots open as well.
Yeah,
So.
hit us up. Let's go hunt. We can shoot some 10 gauges.
Oh, boy. Y'all do. Fold them like a rag doll.
They're effective.
They certainly are.
Folks, thank y'all for listening to Duck Season Somewhere from the Gallatin River Valley in Montana. We've been listening to Brady Davis, Matt McCormick. Life short, get ducks. We all got to make a living, but be sure to make a life in Montana and elsewhere. Thank y'all.